Hey YouTube, welcome back. Today, as promised, we are comparing two knives, and these two knives could be considered distant cousins. These are the two knives here. Why could we call them distant cousins? Well, because they are similar in function and they're similar in form, and they're also similar in history. One of the knives is the Victorinox GAK. GAK, which stands for German Army Knife. It looks like this. It is army green. The other one is the TL-29. This one here is made by Camillus TL-29. Now both these have these abbreviations as names. Those are their commonly referred names. Now, why are these similar? Well, both these knives are military issued knives. So military knives, they were produced under a military contract. This one was produced for the German military, obviously. This one was produced for the US military. Both of these knives were issued to soldiers for a very long time, many decades each. To whom were they issued? Well, the German army knife was issued to all kinds of soldiers. Many soldiers until I think 2002 or something would be issued a knife like this. Now, the German military is much smaller than the US military, but so because of this, many of these are now to be found on the second-hand market. This one, the TL-29, was only issued to certain specialists, especially to electricians and linemen in the US military. Now, what's a lineman, you say? A lineman, as I've said before, is a person who puts down telephone lines. Now, so these were only issued to some specialists, but because the US military is very large, also these can be found in huge numbers in the second-hand market. So, another thing that both of these knives have in common is that they offer excellent build quality for very little money. Because there are so many of these out there, and because not many people know about these, the prices are very reasonable for great build quality. Another thing that they have in common is that they were both produced by, let's call them heavy hitters in the knife industry. Victorinox, of course, is a term most people know. They are very popular and famous. The other one is, this one was made by Camillus, which was at some point also one of the largest knife companies in the world, especially for the US market, before everything became so very international. Camillus went out of business in 2007 or so, 2009. The name might still be around, but the factory and the real company does not exist anymore. But they were both heavy hitters in the knife industry. Both of these knives are still today made by other companies. In fact, under the military contract, this knife was made by other companies, and this knife was also made by other companies. So the same pattern wasn't exclusive to this company, these companies. Other companies made them. Today you can still buy these new from other companies, but both of them are considered inferior in quality today than the original ones, so the vintage ones. Now, okay, let's look at some things, right? Both of these knives have a large pen blade as their main blade. Both of these pen blades are non-locking. The one on the TL-29 is shorter. However, it's also thicker. The blade stock on the TL-29 is just shy of 3 millimeters. Let's see if you can see. And the blade stock on the GAK is about 2.5 millimeters. However, this one, well, it's longer. It also tapers much more towards the tip, while the stock stays almost, it's almost full thick all the way to here. This blade on the TL-29 is much beefier if you in hand. If you will feel it. So also here we have Victorinox regular stainless steel. here on the TL-29 we have carbon steel. This steel would later be marketed by cold steel as carbon V or carbon 5 as they sometimes call it, but I think the real name is supposed to be carbon V. It would also be used in Becker survival knives as I've heard, but I really don't know anything about that. Now the blade length on the TL-29, it's similar to a regular size Victorinox, about 7.1 centimeter blade, while on the GAK the blade is longer than on a regular Victorinox, confusingly enough, 8.2 centimeters. Okay, this they're both non-locking as I've said. This blade also has a strange notch here. I don't know how well you can see it. There. This notch is meant to be a wire stripper, so you'll hold your wire here and you can strip it with this and push it against the side of the notch. That works fairly well, and because this is meant to be an electrician's and lineman's knife, there is this notch here. Okay. Both of these are very adequate knife steels, of course. I really like the Carbon V, but of course the Victorinox knife steel is also not bad. This one has developed a really nice patina. However, the carbon steel needs oiling every now and then, so that's not for everyone. Now, these are both non-locking, as I said. The other blades here, the other two blades are both multi-purpose tool blades. I'll show you that in a second. So they both have additional blades. These are multi-purpose tool blades. But let's look at the exterior first, okay? Now, they both have similar construction, even though it doesn't look like it. They both have two back springs, and they both have three liners, two outside liners, one liner in the middle. Now here, the liners are brass. Here the liners are steel, as it's usual with Victorinox and European knives. Now, this knife also has backside tools, a corkscrew, and an awl, which is here. An awl without a sewing eye, which is normal on these military knives. Now the TL-29 has no such thing. The back springs go all the way through, and in fact they also go around. So, but still, that would be similar construction. The awl on the Victorinox is pretty nice, but there's no such thing on the TL-29. Now, why is there a corkscrew on this knife? It's a military knife. Do German soldiers need a lot of wine bottles opened? Well, maybe this is something they do in their free time. And here we find our first difference. If we think about this for a while, and if we examine this very closely, the intended philosophy of use, as the nut and fancy would say, is different here. The GAK is built as a multi-purpose accessory. So for the soldier to carry around just as one more useful thing, so it's more slender, it's also lighter, and it offers tools for all kinds of situations, including the corkscrew, right? Maybe for after hours. While the TL-29 is purpose-built. It's built only for duty, so for the soldier's duty at work. It's more purpose-built. It's also, that's why it is beefier and, well, heavier. It's meant to be very reliable, while this is an accessory, not really. If you break it or lose it, they'll just give you another one later, and no harm will be done. So if you think about that, that's a bit different. This one is built extra strong, and this one is built for casual use, even though it's still really good quality. Right. Now we have composition covers here on both of these knives. This is some kind of nylon material. It has a grippy texture here. It also has an eagle stamped in, which is part of Germany's national seal, which is a symbol used for the German military and such. There's also a lanyard hole punched through the whole knife. On the other hand, here we have Delrin scales, which is probably a bit harder still than the nylon. No texture zone, no grip, nothing else, no wording, no nothing. And there's no lanyard hole, there's a bail instead. The bail is like a keyring, only it's tougher and tougher and thicker, extends more, protrudes more, which also makes these almost the same length if we also count the bail. So in the pocket, it will feel similar, even though the Victorinox is naturally longer without if we not count the bail. Okay. Then of course we still have the bolsters here on one side, which again is owned to that philosophy that this is supposed to be extra tough. Okay, what's next? So this knife is a 108 millimeters long. The TL-29 without the bail is only 95 millimeters long. But as I explained to you, you probably should count the bail. Now we still have to look at the secondary blades, okay? So on the Victorinox GAK, you have this tool here. Oh, what is this? Well, as its main function, this is a saw. There is a cover here that you can take off. If it's well put, then you can just push this with your thumb and slide this off, and you have a saw. This is the version 2 of this knife, which also has a nail file here. The version 1 of this knife didn't have this nail file. Then you have your multi-purpose opener here, which is, well, it's mainly a bottle cap lifter, but supposedly you could use that also for prying open cans. It's not sharp here, so that would be a bit hard, but it could be done. Then you have here a flathead screwdriver bit, and also this side of the screwdriver would fit into most Phillips screws. So all together, then you have here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 functions. This is non-locking, because a saw really doesn't need a lock, right? Because you push one side. And also because the saw is covered, it's really very safe. You won't, even if it closes, right, you won't hurt yourself as long as you have the cover. Also, as we have already established, it's more the philosophy is to be slim and slender and light. So no lock here. On the TL-29, instead, you have a screwdriver blade. So you have here a thick, full stock flathead screwdriver, which, well, the bottom part also fits in Phillips screws, but less well than on the GAK. Then this part is also edged, so it's not really sharp, but they did put an edge on here, which is for scraping. You can scratch on things with that. And then in the back, again, they have the wire stripper, the same notch that the other blade had. They have put on here too. So while you're using the screwdriver as an electrician, you can also use the wire stripper, same tool. It's also meant to be a prying tool, which is why this is extra thick. And this blade locks. There is a brass liner lock on this. Push to the side. Then you have half stops, and that is this tool. So interestingly enough, the main blade doesn't lock on this knife, but the secondary blade, the screwdriver blade, locks, which makes sense for a screwdriver. If you were to push forward, you don't want the knife to close on you. So, you're pushed forward onto a screw, you don't want the knife to close. So that's why they put a liner lock on that. Very nice. Then you still have the half stop. Both of those blades have a half stop. What is the half stop for? And the European knives don't normally do that. It's an American thing. The half stop is a safety feature, as I've shown you before. If the blade were to close, right, then it still wouldn't close on your fingers, but would stop halfway. This also makes the blade to one hand closing. So now I can close that all with one hand. The Victorinox, of course, being a European knife of European build standards, doesn't have that. They both have a nice back spring, so you don't have to be very worried about this. But so this knife isn't technically one-hand closing. You have to be careful. Of course, you can do it, but if I were to balance on a ladder at the same time, I maybe wouldn't like to do that. While this knife is meant to be one-hand closing. So okay, the Victorinox secondary blade had 6 functions, that being 2 screwdrivers, 2 openers, 1 saw and 1 nail file. The TL-29's blade has 5 functions, which is, well, flat screwdriver, Phillips screwdriver, which works more or less, scraper, wire stripping notch, and also prying tool. It's meant to be like this. This is why it's extra thick. So that is then 5 functions. Okay. Now the screwdriver blade is also much thicker, which of course makes sense. A saw has to be thin. The screwdriver and the prying tool has to be thick. This one is much thicker, as you may or may not be able to see. Okay. Now you ask me, hey, which of these knives is better? And I will say, well, that's a bad question, because they're both really good. Neither of them is better than the other one, in my opinion. Now you'll say, okay, let me change my question. Which one should I buy? I say, well, why don't you just buy both? They're both not expensive. But okay, if you have to buy one, then you must consider which functions do you really need. Here, the big selling point is that this knife has a saw. Right? The saw really cannot be replaced by any other tool on any other knife. If you need a saw, then this one is a good choice. And also maybe if you need a corkscrew, well, then this is a tool that cannot be replaced by anything else on another knife. If you find you need those 2 things, then the GAK is a wonderful choice. Not expensive, very light, good in the pocket, nice item. On the other hand, if you don't need a saw, and you don't need a corkscrew, and you'd rather have a knife that is, well, really beefy and tough, then maybe the TL-29 is a good choice for you. Of course, I cannot really show you this in a video, but this knife feels really substantial. Everything here is built to last. Everything here is built as tough as a pocket knife can be. If you find this is what you're interested in, then maybe the TL-29 is a good choice for you. Now, you also could go for the blade lengths. The Victorinox has a longer blade, which is nice. As I said, 8.2 or 8.5 centimeter, 8.2 I think. And the TL-29 only has a 7.1 centimeter blade. If you think, oh, the regular size Victorinox blade is too short for me, then you could go for this longer one. If you think, nah, it's fine. This is really not a blade that I use for cooking, so that's okay. Then maybe this blade is for you. So this is my comparison, and this is why both these knives could be considered distant cousins. I hope you found this useful. Goodbye.